Welcome our moderator, Kieran Long, and his panelists, Ambassador at Large and Professor of Kuan Yew Centre for Innovative Cities, Heng Chee, CEO of Nextdoor, Friar, and Chairman of Vanke, Yu Liang.
Welcome back. Welcome to everybody again, and to my fantastic panel. We're now going to have a discussion about the future of the city, I hope, from a multiple standpoints. One of our speakers is joining us remotely. Cities, we've heard now a vision from Yu Taika of a place that will continue, a social place that will endure despite the epochal changes that are coming to society and to the world right now. I want to ask you all to kind of react a bit to that idea. What do you see as the effects and impacts that COVID and these other dynamics will have on the city? And maybe I could ask you first, Heng Chee.
Thank you very much, Kieran, and good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I liked what Taika had just said, because he put the emphasis of the city on people. And a city must respond to people and to the land. And if you observe that, it will be sustainable, and the city will cater and will be what, will in fact cater to life in the city. What he reminded us about also is that cities have legacies, and it lasts. And whilst we want to think of how to redesign a city, redo it for after the pandemic, you have to remember there's legacy. You can't just knock down buildings, and it's going to be costly. The pandemic is already costly. Business is down. How do you really redo a city, So that's my first reaction to what was just said.
But your research is also focusing on what you described to me as retaining the kind of magic of the city. What does this mean? What in your mind is that city of the future?
I have a research center, the Kuan Yew Centre for Innovative Cities, and we are looking at the socio-spatial reconfiguration of a city post-COVID. We're looking at, the future of office, revitalizing polycentres, sustaining the magic of the city centre. And one thing that we certainly agree on is that the city post-COVID will be a hybrid city. You've heard so much at this conference about work from home. And that's precisely it. But the point we focus on is that when you work from home as much as we do now, something is lost, and because you're just by yourself, you lose your social connectivity. Yes, you use your WhatsApp, email, and so on. But you're really connecting with people you know. We talk of strong ties, weak ties. Strong ties are the people you talk to all the time. Weak ties, not so often, but helps you with ideas and creativity. You lose that. But in any case, you lose some social connections and social relations. So the first question is, do we build up a social debt, or is it a social deficit because you lose social relations? When you do that, do you lose the ability to cooperate in an office and so on? So for architects and planners, the question is, how do you compensate for that? How do you redesign your office? And how do you redesign space outside of your office to build up spaces so that people can rebuild sort of social connections, social life? I better stop here because I'm talking.
Fascinating. And we have with us Sarah from Nextdoor, who I think can talk really to the theme of this social life. But if I may, I might bring in Chairman Yu first, from the very large scale of building many cities across China. Chairman Yu, we've lived through world-changing events for city dwellers in recent years. What are the impacts you're seeing from COVID and from these other dynamics on the way that you develop cities, the way that you think about the future of the city?
刚才刘泰阁先生说到了说，这个城市经历了很多的磨难，但城市需要保留很多东西。
Mr. Liu talked about cities have been through a lot and they need to preserve some of their characteristics. Indeed, the pandemic has affected cities in unprecedented ways. It has changed the way people live and the economy, and it has led to a sudden halt to people's work and other activities, and has brought immense challenges. Currently, I'm a member of a council, and I am very happy to be able to share and discuss post-pandemic, in post-pandemic era, how do we reinvigorate the city at this forum. The city is full of life. In the face of pandemic, a lot of people are staying in the ICU and have not fully recovered. In traditional building activities, we are concerned with a lot of benchmarks. Under current circumstances, we also need to ask if the city is able to recover on its own. So I believe that in future we need to establish cities as a self-sustaining unit, so that when there is a disaster, the entire system will not be totally affected. Instead, each individual unit can survive on its own. This will enable cities to be able to face future challenges better.
Fascinating. And Chairman Yu, I know that in your work you've talked a lot about the resilience of the city. What does that mean in reality for the way that you build cities? How is Vanke working to build cities with this kind of more intimate social aspect at its heart?
Vanke, in the last few years, we have already put a lot of emphasis on this area. We are also talking about how we execute and how we expand in this area. In this world now, we are focusing a lot on the population growth, on the change of climate, and some related issues. From 2018, we have started talking to a lot of specialists and to discuss with them about a special plan for China. And earlier this year, we also have a strategic joint plan with the Shanghai government. And we also try to solve the current city issues from building a resilient cities perspective. And now we can say that we can put in 3 levels. From the city level, we focus on the ecology, on the health and safety. We incorporate big data and a lot of technologies to create a city that is more future-oriented, that can cope with all the future challenges. So just now I also mentioned about how we create a platform that can integrate all these resources to build a more sustainable life for the city. For example, to have a road that is more usable for the future, have resources that is easier for people to tap into. So we also think about, for example, in each communal hub point, we build residential areas around it so that people can live and work in a more convenient way. Another area we tap into is the smaller area. So how we can better use smaller areas so that people can live in this place that is much more livable. For example, we inject a lot of green concepts. We use a lot of recyclable materials. We use a lot of nature environment to live with the to build a city that can live harmoniously with the nature. And also we have a lot of plants, a lot of sustainable plants, so that a lot of local plants that can be put into our planning. So I'm sure with all this effort we put into, we're able to create an environment that is much more livable.
The translators are doing an extraordinary job, but I know that Vanke has been working on this idea of neighborhoods, building new kinds of neighborhood. I mean, Sarah, we're now sort of coming down in scale, I'd like to think. Tell us a bit about your technology and your platform and what you see that as contributing to the future of the city, and also, of course, what you've seen in your data about the impact of COVID on city life.
Absolutely. So Nextdoor is all about how do we let people connect to the neighborhoods that matter to them, recognizing that, of course, it's not just about the neighborhood that you live in. It might be the neighborhood you work in, it might be the neighborhood your parents live in, your children live in. There are many places that we have deep affinity to. And what I love about what both my esteemed panelists, guests here have said, is that it is about humanity in the end, right? We're talking city, but city is a very cold term. Reality, every place that people live is really a series of interconnected communities. But each of those communities tends to have its own personality. What we've seen in our data post-COVID is that almost 70% of the neighbors on Nextdoor say that the neighborhood is the most important community in their life. Chen Heng already said this comment of weak ties. Research shows that strong, weak ties are actually what makes communities resilient, because in times of emergency, it's not your friends and family who come to save you, because frankly, they're not there in the moment. It's rare that we now live next to our family or even close friends. It is literally the people that live around you. We've done other research that shows knowing just 6 neighbors has a statistically significant impact on your health. So for all of you out there that want to eat healthily or run or whatever you do to live longer, live better, turns out just knowing 6 neighbors is also the answer to that problem. You can all go and knock some doors later. So how's that for a New Year's resolution? But the sad fact, the whole reason our platform was born was because research also showed that people didn't know their neighbors. In the United States, the Pew Institute showed that 29% of people knew one neighbor, 28% of people knew 0. So ergo, over 50% of Americans only knew one person who lived around them. So big shifts happening, but it has to happen at this grassroots level to really make, I think, cities come alive, to be both livable and sustainable. And these are important words. Sorry, from your data, Sarah, can you see what's the optimum scale of a neighborhood? Like, what is a neighborhood for you? Is it a street? Is it a city block? Is it a district? It's about 800 to 1,000 households. And now that is an average that probably doesn't help with what the true dispersion is. It depends where you are. In a city, because people are so densely populated, when you get above 800 to 1,000 households, the noise cancels out the signal. So you're not, if you do ask for recommendations, often they're not that pertinent. So you have to keep it quite tight. Rural areas can get obviously much larger in terms of scale, but it still is about 800 to 1,000 households is big enough. Now, there's still more need for information to travel beyond that, and so, of course, our algorithm does that based on the engagement that's happening. I'll give you an example. I live in California. California just suffered horrible wildfires. The neighborhoods that were in the evacuation path were very active on the platform because people were being evacuated and they wanted to know what to do. They wanted to talk to the government and to the emergency services. The neighborhoods next door were active, too, because they wanted to know, what's happening? Am I safe? And could I help? The next door neighborhoods from there, they just wanted to try to help. And so it continued. That information actually traveled the whole way from Lake Tahoe, where the wildfire was really strong, down to the Bay Area and then out to other states. So that's an example where neighborhood information actually wants to travel very far, but often neighborhood information needs to stay hyper-local. And that's why I think the neighborhood really is the unit of change when it comes to things like civic engagement, community activation, and so on. I'd love to come back in a minute to, how does that look? What kind of buildings, streets, cities might accommodate these 1,000 household neighborhoods in a good way? But
Ambassador Chan, did you want to comment there?
I'm glad to hear Susan talk of this community building because, you know, when you talk of how do you redesign the city post-COVID, people think of buildings and wellness and climate change effects, parks, bike lanes, and so on. But building the community is extremely important, and that is not often talked enough. That's why I talked of the social debt, social deficit. And, you know, urban planners, you know Richard Sennett, he's been decrying the loss of social glue in cities. And, you know, the city's falling apart. Communities are falling apart. We've forgotten how to cooperate. And you are saying, through this app, through this crisis of the fire, people are coming back together. And in the end, you see, we want to talk about how do you build social capital. So for me, it's social debt, social deficit, going towards social glue. How do you create the social glue? And then, you know, the community as a whole, you have social capital because you've learned to cooperate.
Absolutely.
And the question is, how big is that community? What size should it be? And I'm not sure there is an optimum size. You worked with 800 to 1,000. In our neighborhoods, we try to do that, 1,000 families in a block, you know, and you try to engender that sense of cooperation and so on. So we could try, you know, to sort of bring that back. But I think in this building of the space and community, there is also a place for putting into, I think Mr. Liu from Yu from Vanke has said he goes for small spaces too, you know, and I think when you build in a big city, the small spaces become intimate spaces that attract you. And it becomes, in fact, quite intimate, and you can have social life in this small space.
Absolutely. Chairman Yu, if I could come to you, what are your reflections on the scale of the neighborhood? I mean, obviously your Vanke acts at a very large scale in some very large cities in China, which have seen tremendous growth in just a couple of generations. What does that neighborhood scale mean to you when you're building at that, you know, in China? Can you think of any examples?
So actually in China, the neighborhood does have a different interpretation. I also agree very much on the other two guests' discussion just now. It is very important to have a community life to create a resilient city. So in China, actually, community life has always been put such an emphasis. But this is a soft factor. From the hard factor, maybe I can give you an example from city's point of view. For example, Shanghai. Shanghai, other than the city development, they also create this project called the 15-minute community zone. So they want to create satellite areas. Basically, you can have a very small single unit. You can fulfill all your life needs within 15 minutes. That's walking distance, 15 minutes of walking distance. So they're trying to create such a small unit that you, as a resident in this zone, you feel very convenient, very at ease, very easy to access to all the needs you have. And for Vanke, we also have a very similar project. For example, just now you mentioned about how important neighbors are. In Vanke, we have about 4 million households. We have a lot of campaigns, like we have a running campaign. We can use running to join residents together so that they can know each other, they can be familiarized with each other. We also think that 15 minutes walking distance is a great project, and this is something that is achievable.
4 million people running all at the same time. I am sure that they're not, but an extraordinary vision and extraordinary scale. What for you in the US and in the places where your network is present, what kind of places look like they have the most social solidarity, that have the strongest weak ties? What are the kinds of cities, suburbs, villages, towns that are working?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had the magic bullet answer to that. Because it is the beauty of community is that it's so diverse is actually the answer, right? If you go to a city like London, London is incredibly active on Nextdoor. We're today almost getting close to 1 in 4 households are on the platform. The most active neighborhood is called Between the Commons, and it's literally between Clapham Common and Wandsworth Common. And really its commonality is millennial parents. So it's often more demographic driven, where you'll find new movers, millennial parents, people who want to be, we call them rapid responders, who tend to get involved in more, emergency is such a strong word, but they're usually active in their community because something is going wrong. Those are the types that tend to make a community sing. I
smile only because in London I can imagine people like to complain about their neighbours as much as they like to have solidarity with them.
That can be okay as well. and the point in social capital building, it really has to start very, very small. It's the willingness to do something for your neighbour, even while you may complain. Someone asks for a recommendation, right? I need an emergency plumber, and you're willing to actually take the time to respond. Or if someone looking for, we often find people buy and sell a lot of things on Nextdoor, but frankly, they give away for free. And why do they do that? It feels very community building to them, right? Moms will give away baby clothes that their child has now grown out of, or bikes that the child had for a couple of years, because they want to feel connected back into their community. And it's great to see that bike maybe get ridden past again with another kid on it. And so those are the little steps that we do to build social capital that help us in those moments where we really disagree, right? We've talked a lot at this conference about the polarization of the US, but who cares if I'm red or blue? If I'm standing in the coffee shop and we're talking about the bike that our kids both own together, right? That is the beauty of a community, because that's when a community will stick together and when they need to, regardless of things like political affiliations.
So there's environments that are strong in this, have the possibility to build the kind of trust that we've been talking about these last days when it comes to other issues like politics, the environment.
Absolutely. And when bad things happen, those communities, fewer people die during real emergencies, and they recover so much faster. Because when people feel invested in the people around them, they stick around to make it better. And when they don't, they just scatter to the four winds, right? They don't want to live in a place that's going to have another hurricane or another wildfire. So it's even more important why we need to build that social capital.
I want to ask you each a question, partly inspired by Dr. Liu's fantastic talk about Singapore, where he challenged us with the idea that cities are not really going to change that much. For him, the idea of the city is a kind of eternal, enduring idea of a social spectrum, and we see in Singapore a city developing well, growing seemingly reasonably equitably, reasonably ecologically. I want to ask you each, and maybe I could start with you, Heng Chee. Do you see us in the midst of a paradigm shift in cities, or do you see the kind of continuity that we heard about in the previous speech?
When you talk of cities, Kieran, I think you have to differentiate between cities in Europe, in America, small cities, wealthy cities, affluent cities. In many of the cities around the world, mega cities and so on, they are struggling to recover from COVID. And it's economic recovery. They don't even have time to think about how to build a healthcare system. It's really economic recovery and how do I just stop this now? So it's a different conversation. Are things going to change? Is this an opportunity? I think some things will change. I tend to agree with Taika. You're not going to get great changes, as I said earlier. There's legacy. The city is there. You don't knock down buildings, People say, how do you bring life to High Street? It's there. You've got to think of activities, new businesses, attractions, mixed use, whatever, to ginger up and bring life to the city.
It's a fascinating challenge.
Yeah. But it's really hard to think of starting from a clean sheet. You don't do that. And so I think there's something about a city being eternal. London is a grand old lady, yeah? And I would say Paris is another chic old lady, But in all our cities, the character is there, and we wouldn't want to change it. And that is the point for the community building, the familiarity, and so on. So what can you change? And I would say it is the small things. That's why I think you can add parks. I call them oases of silence, because in a big city, you need that to recover, you need that, and give small spaces. Mr. Yu, I wonder whether you think this is useful. Between buildings, you have small spaces. People will gather, they will smoke, they will have a cup of coffee, and they will talk. And you really need to multiply that sort of thing.
And it's interesting that in all the carbon that's been expended building the city needs to be kept and needs to be reused and reanimated.
And you have to use this again, yes. And I think I would like to see more intimate spaces, green spaces introduced in a post-COVID environment, not knocking down buildings and redoing a lot of other things.
Sarah, maybe I could come to you next. Do you see us in the midst of a paradigm shift in the way that people are living in their communities, or do you see that continuity?
I think the power of local and localism is here for good. It's just an ongoing trend. So this power of proximity is always going to be around us. That said, we have absolutely seen this shift of people out of cities. They want space, they value space more, partially because it makes them feel safer post a pandemic. What they have missed out on, and there's also, of course, more and more people saying that they will work in a hybrid way. So that gives them more alternates to live further from that city center. I will tug on the thread about intimate spaces. There's a term, the third space, so our home, the place we may go to work, but the third space is a place where we love to be known. So it's that feeling of walking into your local coffee shop and the person saying the usual, like what can I make for you? Because they know you as a real person. That fell away a lot during the pandemic because the high street got shuttered, libraries and so on closed down, and it's particularly taxing on older people because often that is their only place where they have a conversation with someone. So this kind of epidemic of loneliness that people talk about, often it's driven by things like cities shuttering the third space. So I think that's something we do need to think about as cities come back alive again.
And those spaces are not just presumably commercial environments, they can also be institutions or other kinds of public.
Absolutely, they can be government sponsored too. Parks are important, but parks are often quite, they are silent spaces. And often this craving of human-to-human connection, how do you make that work? Because we have all disappeared behind panes of glass. And yet so much of our mental and ergo our physical well-being is about the real life human-to-human connection.
Chairman Yu, if I could come to you on the same question, do you see a kind of continuity in the way that you're working with building the city in China, or do you think that there are significant transformations coming to our practices and to the way we must build the city in the future?
I believe the urbanization of China will see a lot of changes. In the past 40 years, cities in China has developed rapidly. Today, the development of cities in China is now centered on the person, on the human being. So the future model will be different. We are already seeing in China, cities are developing in the direction of multi-cities, multi-nodes. For example, in March, Shanghai launched the development of three new towns. For example, they prioritize decarbonization and resilience. And so their core target is to reinvigorate the cities. And they prioritize the needs of the human. So the target is by 2035, they will develop these 3 towns into towns. These three towns will become models for the development model of a multi-centered city. And these towns will be self-sufficient, including industrial, residential, and commute purpose. So I believe that post-pandemic, Chinese cities will be developing in the direction of this emphasis on the human.
It's fascinating that all three of our speakers have begun to emphasize the very detailed social level of change that will be coming to our cities. It's been fantastic to have your insights. Ambassador Chan, Sarah Friar, Chairman Yu, please join with me in thanking them for a fascinating discussion.